Hereby reconvene the Board of Education special meeting in open session at 5 p.m. The meeting is being both recorded and live streamed for public viewing. We have a quorum present with all board members in attendance. I would like to welcome the community members in attendance, and as a reminder, governing board meetings are a business meeting of the board held in public. And although public participation is encouraged, it is not the public's meeting. It is the duty of the board president and/or clerk of the board to maintain an orderly, respectful, and peaceful meeting where all perspectives, voices, and opinions are welcome. Please refrain from speaking out while another person has the floor. This we learned in, first grade? At the appropriate time on the agenda, individuals wishing to provide public comment on items appearing on the agenda will be called upon one at a time to do so in accordance with Board Bylaw 9323. The board cannot and will not respond to non-agendized items, but a staff member will reach out to you on matters that may need to be reviewed as appropriate. Item D1, the board met in closed session to conference with legal counsel regarding potential litigation and to discuss the performance evaluation of the district superintendent. No formal action was taken. Oh, thank you. Now, a comment before we do this. We're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to remind you that this is June 6th. Two important things happened. One was personal for me. This was my dad's birthday. But more importantly, this was the invasion of Europe. A big deal. I was 8 years old at the time, and I remember it vividly. And I'm sure there are people here who do as well. 160,000 people hit the shores. 3,000 Americans died in the first 24 hours. 3,000. That's a whole high school wiped out. Something to think about when you salute the flag. These people died for freedom. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Forward and onward. D3, approval of the agenda. This calls for a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. D4, special recognition. Call on Dr. Andrews.
So we like to recognize someone who, we've done this for other employees, and we want to recognize someone tonight. Years ago, the district used to provide anniversary pins when people hit certain anniversary marks, when they served in the district 20, 25, and 30 years and so on. And during the recession of 2008, 2009, things were really, really difficult, and so we stopped doing that. And so a couple of years ago when I came here, I'd heard a story about someone missing all those pins. They hadn't gotten them, but they're about to retire. And I said to Mr. Daniel, I said, I think we can probably afford some pins again. And so we went back and reestablished that tradition of providing those pins. So tonight we're going to honor Mr. Paul Diffley with 20 years of service to the district.
Wow.
That's pretty nice. Thank you.
Congratulations.
My goodness.
That's a long time to serve on the board, 20 years. So it's noteworthy, and we appreciate that. So we want to make sure you receive the same as our employees get. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. And I know that reinstituting that tradition of pins has meant a lot to our employees. And it's a great gesture. Thank you. Item D5, public comment regarding meeting agenda items. Let's see. Don't have that. Oh, let's see. Here we are. At this time, the governing board welcomes public comments. Pursuant to Education Code 35145.5, public comment at special board meetings may only be received concerning items posted on the agenda. Individuals wishing to address the board are requested to complete a request to address the Board of Education card located at the entrance to the boardroom and submit it to the executive assistant to the superintendent and board. In accordance with Board Bylaw 9323, individual speakers shall be allowed up to 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda item. The board shall limit the total time for public input on each item for 20 minutes. However, in exceptional circumstances, when necessary to ensure full opportunity for public input, the board president may, with board consent, adjust the amount of time allowed for public input and or the time allotted for each speaker. How many do we have?
For this topic, but some people are yielding time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
Okay.
11. And we have one person who's 2 people are yielding time to
Yeah.
again.
Okay. Board, we will go over slightly the time limit we normally have. Is there anybody who has objections to that?
Well, there's 2 more for a different topic. So, but
On a
yeah,
different
that's not an
Okay.
issue. Yeah.
Great. In that case, we'll go ahead with the comments. And I move that we suspend the rules regarding the 20-minute limit on public comment and allow each speaker up to 3 minutes. All in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none.
So we have Bob Cowell, followed by Arlene Fournier.
Okay, thank you.
And
The first speaker will be Bob Cowell, followed by Arlene Fournier. Is it something I said? Oh,
You don't have an overhead, so anyway, we don't want to defund the schools. We want schools to succeed in reading, writing, science, and math. We want the students to succeed in life. By the way, this is about the bond and the budget. However, spending large amounts of money to indoctrinate students with woke ideology does not add to their ability to get through life. It makes them subject to the state, believing that the state has the answers, and freedom, the autonomy, is to be discarded as old-fashioned. A school used to be a place where kids learned the basics. If one looks at the recent ratings for top school districts in Riverside County, one would find Murrieta School District, as being the top school district. One would think that just about every child would be proficient in the basics of language and math. We spend as much money here that one would ask how schools could be failing, as I want to talk about it below, and also want to show a diagram of it. That it's right here. The projected 2023-24 budget expenditure is $353 million, according to this piece of paper right here. This is 30.7% increase in spending over the previous year, respectively. That is $3,000 for every man, woman, and child in Murrieta, $12,000 per year for a family of 4. Our number 1 status in Riverside County makes this district number 43 in California and number 2,517th in the United States. I looked at the scores, and only 57% of the students are proficient in reading and writing, and only 43% of the students are proficient in math. The money is terrible. Salaries have risen, number of staff and administrative personnel has risen, but student performance has waned. If the system were working and more money went money meant better students, there is a case to do a cost-benefit analysis to find the sweet spot of salaries, buildings, and student scores. Without that analysis, there is no case to proceed with a budget or bond when people are suffering from the highest cost of living in the United States, that's the state of California. While state-mandated housing is here, we have to wait until we see who will fill these apartment buildings. Will they have children? In the meantime, if we need space, maybe we can look at other school districts or rent empty buildings for the short term until the demand subsides. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Arlene Fournay. And following Ms. Fournay will be John Leonard. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Arlene Fair. Forney's my maiden name. I went to Murrieta Elementary School, Thompson Middle School, and Murrieta Valley High School before going to college out of state in Indiana. I got married and we lived in the desert for 12 years in Indio. And I'm here because my mom asked me to be, and I have very good parents. I'm here to share my experience of selling our first home and buying a new one. We found that in selling our home in Indio that the tax rate did not add to our property value. It actually was a deterrent to several buyers that just couldn't pay the taxes. They just said, well, we like the property, but we can't do it. And that was before Desert Sands Unified approved a new bond in March. Now, buying a new home, we wanted to come live closer to my parents here in Murrieta, and we couldn't afford the homes here in Murrieta. The average, I guess, is around $688K for a single family home. We ended up moving to Homeland. We've been in our home for less than a month, and to be honest, when we saw the tax bill, I broke into tears because this home that we could afford became less affordable. And it's not just the property tax. There's a Romo Land School District has a special tax that applies to our home, and we did not vote on that. That was voted upon by voters before any of those homes were built, and we're feeling the burden. It's not just the taxes, it's gasoline, groceries. We don't have a $5 Starbucks a day that we can give up. We're already giving up a lot as it is. We're house poor. I have my old tax bill here from Indio, and it included the school district, the community college, the water district, the waste, the mosquitoes, the list goes on. Here I have special taxes for the school district, the Valley-wide Recreation and Park District, a second one for Valley-wide Recreation and Park District, and a special tax for our new community. And it comes out to thousands of dollars. It's putting a burden on families like mine that the school district is supposed to be serving, and we don't even have a say of where the money really goes. General things like modernization, that's not a line item. My parents taught us to budget, and it requires specifics. And sometimes some of those specifics have to go. When things are tight, we take it to our Eucharistic Lord and ask him to show us what's really important. And a lot of times, the things that we think are important, we can give up.
Thank you. Okay. Welcome.
Hello. John Leonard, the next speaker, yes?
Yes, sir.
Yes, and on the card there, I filled out a couple of items I'd like to address, so I just could have my 3 minutes and a few more seconds, if I may, afterwards, to get all my thoughts out, since I've already lost 20 seconds here. So may I continue at the end of the
Let's
clock?
reset the clock.
Just start at 3.
Can we reset and give me just like an extra 15 seconds, maybe? That'd be good? All right, good. All right, thank you. Appreciate that very much. Good evening. As I touched on at our last special meeting, we seem to have become accustomed to throwing around large sums of money without much thought of where it comes from. Naturally, it comes from our wallets, and the board needs to take great care in not only its allocation, but in assuring the taxpayers are part of the process. It's not too much to ask that we be given a list of project priorities. Not everything can be a must-have item. Some things are going to have to wait. Burdening the property owners with a $200 million bond in these times is asking too much. We also should be able to see a return on our investments, or at minimum, a pathway. Bragging about our position on the scholastic totem pole doesn't impress me when half the students haven't obtained grade proficiencies. When a dozen or more citizens point out the failings of a truly offensive textbook, which probably most of you haven't read, and then just plow right on through and approve it anyway, doesn't help matters either. The people need to know that you're willing to work with us, not in spite of us, which is the impression I am getting lately. Mr. Langworthy suggested a parent committee could help choose a few classic works to use in the language composition AP course. That sounded like a reasonable suggestion. De Tocqueville's Democracy in America may not be a literary classic, but it is filled with many insightful observations. It was a reading selection in the charter high school my children attended. In it, de Tocqueville states, "The American Republic will endure until the day Congress discovers that it can bribe the public with the public's money." On a national level, we have reached that juncture. Case in point, recently Joe Biden posted on X, quote, "Let's give public school teachers a raise," close quote. Well, that's nice. While some may be deserving, certainly not all are. It seems this board, that in many ways doesn't seem to respect us, is asking for us to continue funding the district and do so using our own money. A check of Transparent California shows over 50,000 individual retirees statewide collecting well over $100,000 in pension payouts. This district has dozens of retirees falling into that $100,000 a year club, many over $150,000 per year. We must be keenly aware that when we promise today, or what we promise today, burdens our children in the future. Eventually, you will run out of everyone else's money. Pay based on merit, not merely seniority, makes sense in the business world, and it must make sense in the public sector as well. And on a completely different note, today marks D-Day's 80th anniversary, and our Ed Code mandates pride in country and citizenship is to be developed in the public schools. Most teens couldn't show you where Normandy is, let alone the importance of D-Day. At the Normandy Cemetery, which holds over 6,000 Americans, many of which were teenagers, the statue's name is Spirit of American Youth Rising from the Waves. It doesn't say the spirit of American youth, but it suggests that all teens in America have this special spirit. And I hope that the district does that all it can to uphold that notion in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have, let's see, 1, 2, 3. We have 3 people yielding time for Jack Guerrero. And he will be followed by Lilia Velasco.
I don't think I need all 12 minutes, but I think if 3 individuals have yielded, that should put me at 12, I think. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, board, members of the public. My name is Jack Guerrero. I'm a local resident and community activist. I'm also a certified public accountant with banking and public sector experience. I am here today to speak again and re-emphasize my opposition to the contemplated $200 million bond issuance targeted for November's general election, and to refute several arguments raised by board members after my last public comment. My overall proposition is unchanged. At best, this contemplated bond is irresponsibly premature, and at worst, it is profligate, wasteful, expensive, and sneaky in the most detrimental combination for everyone except government insiders. I should like to begin by addressing the project list, which this board approved at the last meeting. As described in my original comments, The bulleted list is ripe with general and generic descriptions and no specific delineation of projected expenditures or timelines or milestones by school or by function. The list also includes descriptions of what appear to be normal course recurring operating expenses, like, and I quote, equipment, plumbing, furniture, hardware, software, paint, cameras, athletic equipment, landscaping, and other equipment, whatever that means. All of these are examples of maintenance. And as I explained at the last meeting, you should never incur one-time debt to fund normal recurring operating expenditures. Debt should be limited to infrastructural improvements or capital projects or one-time non-recurring expenditures. You should never incur debt to fund normal course operations. The last bullet in the project list was a catch-all, and I quote, for all necessary work incidental to the specific projects above, end quote. When I raised my concern about this black hole at the last meeting, nobody on the board or through staff comments actually objected to my description. Why? Because it's absolutely true. Instead, staff comments appeared to double down, acknowledging that the project list was deliberately vague and then arguing that this was actually in the best interest of the district because it could pivot at any time on short notice for any reason. One board member even boasted that a developer from another district reacted to the list with enthusiasm. And of course he did, because from a developer's perspective, the best case parameters for any project are high threshold budgets, general categories, maximum flexibility, no milestones, no specificity, and no accountability. Viewed from this perspective, the project list was beautiful. But viewed from the perspective of parents and taxpayers who would be burdened with a $200 million tax, in the case of many residents for the rest of their natural lives, the project list amounts to taking money from the people and then demanding that we trust you. That's what it basically amounts to. Just trust us, says the board. Well, I'm sorry, board, but government does not have a good track record of responsible financial stewardship. Dare I say, almost every bond issued at the state level has been poorly mismanaged, with cost overruns in the normal course. This district does not have a good track record of fiscal discipline. Just take a look at the growing share of salary and benefits, now 85% of the current fiscal year's adopted budget, growing on average 10% each year since 2020, far in excess of both inflation and student population growth over that same period. Sorry, but we cannot just trust you on blind faith, and we should not have to resort to our gut for a sense of whether these projects would be properly managed. You may not like precision and tight budgets the way I do, fine, but meet us halfway. Give us something, a percentage breakdown by facility, chronological milestones, a list of the highest priority facilities to replace or renew, assurances that you will subject contracts to public bidding and that projects will focus exclusively on classrooms and student use facilities and not lavish Wall Street-styled offices for administrators. And as a testament of your own fiscal discipline, show us evidence that you are properly managing your own budgets. I think a strong project list with basic delineations, strong budgetary parameters, and airtight internal control commitments can be assembled with careful preparation, thoughtful deliberation, and regular town hall feedback. But this will not happen in 15 days. It may well take 1 or 2 years. And even then, the bar has to be high. Only the most compelling value propositions should be subjected to a tax. The next point I would like to address is the interest rate environment that is not currently favorable to bond issuance. You see, debt is not free money. We are required to make significant interest payments during a high interest rate environment with no near-term remediation from the Federal Reserve Board. The cold reality is that issuing debt this year would cost millions of dollars in incremental interest payments, perhaps tens of millions of dollars, depending on how the bond is structured, versus waiting for a better environment. Even 1/100th of an interest rate point can be the equivalent of multiple teacher salaries. The general consensus is that interest rates should start to come down in 2025 with some stabilization, albeit at levels exceeding the pre-pandemic average. If we want to issue a bond, the best advice is to wait. Now, when I brought this up at the last meeting, one of the board members dismissed my argument outright and suggested that we could always refinance. This is not as easy as it sounds. It is simply unrealistic that we would readily refinance in 2025. The reality is that bond refinancing carries significant transaction costs. Interest rates would have to come down dramatically, several points in the case of a bond, before it even becomes a break-even proposition for the district. You know this from personal experience with your own homes, except that in the case of bonds, the transaction costs are disproportionately higher. And in the meantime, we continue to accrue interest at the higher levels. It is better to get it right from the start. I also worry about the terms of the bond, which have yet to be disclosed. To structure the bonds, the school board would turn to outside financial advisors, lawyers, and bond underwriters. But that can put the school district in a vulnerable position to be taken advantage of, pushed to accept higher interest rates or paying millions of dollars in unreasonable fees. And because this deal is so large, nearly $200 million, there are significant financial consequences if you don't get the best deal possible. At this juncture, we have no way of assessing this predicament. A couple of other points to emphasize from my previous round of comments. It is simply too premature for this school board to impose greater debt and taxation on our residents before we even get a better handle on state, county, and local budgets that will inevitably afflict our residents in the most unfavorable ways. If you're following the drama in the California legislature, you'll know that we are facing a $45 billion budget deficit with key disagreements between the governor and legislative leaders. They simply cannot agree on what to trim, and worse still, each has made promises to every special interest group under the sun. This impasse will almost certainly be resolved with greater fees on residents and more creative taxation, whether it's business license fees or Department of Vehicle renewals. At the county level, supervisors are exploring additional tax measures as we speak. Municipal budgets across the region will also experience stress, resulting in likely adjustments to service fees across the board. Finally, we have yet to earn the trust of parents. I am sorry to say this. At minimum, we should come through for parents on parental rights and parental notification. We should evidence test score improvement in core academic disciplines, like something better than the 62% failure rate in mathematics for 11th graders in Murrieta, which is embarrassing and unconscionable. And we should end political, cultural, and sexual indoctrination of children. When we can evidence this moral obligation fulfilled, then and only then should we come to parents with greater and more burdensome demands on their families. Thank you for your attention. I yield my time.
Lilia Velasco, who will be followed by Christine Schmidt. Welcome.
Okay, I'm a parent and a homeowner here in Murrieta, and I want to express my concerns about the bond. I don't necessarily oppose it, but don't understand the pressure to push it through so quickly.
Could you pull the microphone in just a hair? Thank you.
Okay. As far as I'm aware, the public has not been given a clear understanding of how the money will be utilized. Our schools are overcrowded and only getting worse due to the number of apartments and homes being built. Maybe we should reconsider continuing to let surrounding area students attend our schools and focus on kids that live in the district. When I first moved to Murrieta, I had to show proof of residency, including my mortgage statement. I've had to show proof of residency since I have not had to show proof of residency since my child was in 7th grade, and she's going to be a junior this year. The district wants more tax money, but elementary schools have parents purchasing classroom supplies. High school girls' sports can't get transportation to away games. The schools rely on parents to leave their jobs during the day to pick up the kids and drive them to the games. Parents do all the hard work, and yet some of you want to keep the parents in the dark. As a Murrieta homeowner, I don't want to be responsible for the district's debt for the next 30 years and have zero improvements made towards educating these students. It's great that Murrieta schools are ranked so highly. This is one of the reasons we moved to this community. What's concerning to me is the bar in California's educational system has been set so low. I looked at the CAF's overall set scores for the 22-23 school year and was in shock to see that 57% of the kids did not meet or nearly met the minimum requirement in math, and only 43% for English. Some teachers are more focused on political BS, LGBTQ, and safe spaces instead of actual teaching. That is not to imply there are not good teachers. The bottom line is these kids can't read or do math at an appropriate level. One of our board members in a previous meeting said kids can't read. This was obviously a broad stroke and not meant to mean no one can read. Then a group of teachers took it personal and flew off the handle. One even started crying at the podium, him needing a safe space of his own. Test scores do not lie. Schools are failing to educate our students to enter the real world, and I have lost all confidence in the Murrieta School Board. Thank God my daughter has 2 more years, and my prayers go out to all the parents with younger kids. So I urge the board to vote no until adequate information is provided as to how the district will be spending our tax dollars. Thank you.
Mrs. Schmidt will be followed by Mr. Reynoso or Reguero. Jose, go ahead, please.
Okay.
We'll figure it out.
Good evening. So I am a community member and a taxpayer, and I am here to express my concerns regarding the proposal to pass the school bond in our community. While I understand the importance of investing in education and providing our students with the best resources possible, I believe there are several reasons why passing this bond may not be the best course of action at this time. First and foremost, the financial burden that this school bond would place on taxpayers cannot be ignored. Many members of our community are already struggling to make ends meet, and imposing additional taxes to fund this bond may put undue strain on families and individuals. It is crucial to consider the economic well-being of our community members before making a decision that could have long-lasting financial repercussions. Furthermore, the specifics of how the funds from the school bond would be allocated are a bit unclear. Without a detailed plan outlining how the money will be spent and how it will directly benefit our students, it is difficult to justify asking taxpayers to foot the bill. Transparency and accountability are essential when it comes to managing public funds, and without clear information on the proposed projects, it is hard to support this initiative, especially since the majority of the members of our community aren't even aware of this bond. Our state is already in a financial crisis, and trying to hurry up and approve this bond without more research and discussion on it seems unwise. A better decision would be to possibly have like a town hall meeting and have open discussions on this issue over time to allow others in the community to give their input. As a taxpayer myself, I would feel much more at ease being on board with passing this bond at a time when our economy is not tanking. Hopefully that will happen in a year or two, but this year is definitely not the time. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next speaker following this gentleman will be Teresa Wells. Welcome.
Good evening.
And-
Members of
and,
the, I'm
Give
sorry,
me your last name again. It's
Jose Rigario.
Rigario. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, members of the board, President Diffley and Dr. Andrews. As a Murrieta community member, homeowner, and taxpayer, I would like to know, first of all, how many students attend the Murrieta schools from outside the city, intra-district transfers, and how is the school district being reimbursed for the cost of those students or for their use of our facilities? I would also like to know what cost-cutting measures you have taken as a board to save money before you put out a bond. Okay? And the other thing I'm just not able to understand, you have the state of California demanding that we build all these apartments. Are we getting any money from the state to cover the, where are we on that? We have to follow a mandate, and yes, they're coming back to the taxpayer to cover that cost? Yeah, that makes no sense to me. I think somebody needs to get a hold of King Newsom and ask for some, somehow some money. Okay? So thank you, and I look forward to your answer to those questions, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Should I start?
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Dr. Andrews, President Diffley, and all board members. I am here because I am 100% in favor of the proposed school bond measure. In my opinion, the bond is quite frankly a necessity. Furthermore, I love it because it's designed so that no one's property taxes will be raised. The bond measure will keep the current tax rate flat. Flat is a good thing. Placing this bond measure on the November ballot is good timing because the state is expected to float a bond measure which would match our funds by 50%. The state has a serious budget shortfall, and now is our golden opportunity to get the state's money before it goes away. Murrieta has housing developments popping up seemingly everywhere. For example, the Murrieta Heights development will bring in 522 single-family homes. The Vineyard Project in West Murrieta will bring in 877 homes. And the Canopy, aka Bridges development, will bring in 542 housing units. The City of Murrieta's general plan expects the population to increase by at least 18,000 persons in the next 10 years. That's lots more children for our schools. Now is the time to prepare for the future influx of students. We need to build at least 2 schools west of Interstate 15. The process of building a school takes years to plan and make a reality. The district also needs to make repairs to 19 campuses. The current budget is only enough to keep up with critical repairs. Our schools are aging, and there are hugely needed upgrades, renovations, and new technology needed. Examples are that we need to replace our outdated science classrooms. We need facilities for state-mandated classrooms for 4-year-olds at 11 campuses. Plus, there are roofs that need repairing and HVAC systems that need to be fixed. Some of you remember that in the 1990s, parents failed to pass a bond measure, and this district ended up with year-round school for students in elementary and middle school. They were divided into 4 groups, tracks A, B, C, or D. Elementary students would go to school for 3 months and have 1 month off. However, the high school students back in the 90s stayed on a traditional schedule. That meant parents with more than 1 child could have their kids on different tracks. We don't want that to happen again. It made life complicated for the parents since their children were rarely on the same schedule. And to members of the audience, there are people on this school board who want to defund the public schools. Please remember that, and also in our audience. Good night, and thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Greg Longworthy, who will be followed by Karen Poznanski. Welcome.
Good to be here. Good evening, Board. I'd like to talk on LCAP goal number 4, ensure all school sites develop positive environments where students, staff, and family feels connected and valued. What I'm going to talk about is my experience at a school that did not have much money.
Could you raise the microphone?
Yep,
just
I'm
here?
going to
Thank
talk about my experience at a school that did not have much money, and so just give you some ideas about how we improved the reputation of our school and I think the quality of education. These are pretty simple. The first thing is the quality of the curriculum that you pick, and that was my concern about that other textbook. The basic guideline for an English teacher, I think, is to pick quality curriculum, teach kids the principles of morality, truth, justice, patriotism, and a true comprehension of the rights, duties, and dignity of American citizenship. And that's a variety. You know, we're going to disagree on what books are best to teach, but that's what an English teacher has the freedom to do is pick what they think is best. And then the second thing is transparency, which is really key. Transparency to the parents. You give out a syllabus. I would send a syllabus home. I think Izzy said this, and then have the parents sign it along with the school rules, and the parents know what they're getting. The students know what to expect. A simple thing I did too is I just had the parents save all their work, put it in a notebook, and the parents would always know what we were teaching and what the kids were doing. And that really helped. And I had an open door policy. You want to come look at Mr. Langworthy's class, just come anytime. The next thing, and I think, Nancy, you were emphasizing this, is the structure in the classroom. Very clear rules, very clear consequences, very clear grading standards. And then that also gives a very comfortable atmosphere for the students. They know what to expect. There's no surprises. Also, school discipline. Clear rules in the classroom, clear consequences in the classroom. Nick, I think you've been talking about this. And the same thing on school grounds. You have to have very clear school policies on the school grounds, and they have to be enforced. And that creates a very good, calm, more calm, as calm as a high school can be, atmosphere as well. And then I think those things together, good curriculum, clear classroom discipline, clear grading standards, and then clear school discipline standards. They don't cost money, but it really would improve the reputation of the school and be a great argument then if you want to sell your school, need more money. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, just give me 1 second. You know, your printer always works until it doesn't.
It
So
doesn't.
kind of knows. Okay, good evening. I'm a teacher in this district and would like to speak to the LCAP supports we give English learners. As a teacher of all students, including many English learners, I'm committed to providing every student with the highest quality education, regardless of their background or language proficiency. The cultural diversity that English learners bring to our classrooms is invaluable, and teachers here ensure EL students have the supports and opportunities they need to succeed. English learners are a vital part of our school community. They bring unique perspectives and experiences that enhance our learning environment. Teachers' commitment to these students include providing them with full access to Common Core academic content standards in addition to English language development standards. Through specialized instructional strategies and targeted resources, we help our EL students achieve academic success and develop their language proficiency. At the last board meeting, I was deeply troubled to hear a discriminatory public comment suggesting that closing the borders is necessary to protect our schools from a flood of English learners, which will drain our district financially. I can think of many reasons why our district is being drained financially, and it stems from decisions made by Paul Diffley, Nick Pardue, and Julie Vandergrift. Our schools should be a safe haven of learning and community where every child feels safe, welcomed, and valued. We must recognize that discriminatory comments not only undermine the contributions of English learners, but also harm the inclusive and supportive environment we strive to create for all students.
Furthermore, this type of discrimination against ELs mirrors the harmful rhetoric and policies that target our LGBTQ plus students, such as our district's illegal forced outing policy passed by Paul Diffley, Nick Pardue, and Julie Vandergrift. As educators committed to fostering a safe and inclusive environment, it's essential that we confront and dismantle all forms of prejudice and exclusion in our schools. Our educational community thrives on diversity, and it is our responsibility and the responsibility of this board to stand against any form of discrimination or exclusion rather than allow it and perpetuate it. We must make it clear to all in this community that discriminatory views will not be considered nor valued by this board or this district. Our teachers' commitment to equity and inclusion is reflected in our daily actions and interactions with students. We create learning environments where every student has the opportunity to succeed. I encourage all members of our community to join together in rejecting discrimination and embracing the diversity that makes our schools vibrant and dynamic. And happy Pride Month, everyone. I hope this month makes some of you feel as uncomfortable as you make our LGBTQ students feel every day of their existence.
No more cards. Okay, well, thank you all. Let's go to E, which is consent calendar. Consent calendar items are maybe removed from the consent calendar for discussion and individual action. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar items E1 through E3 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion is approved. F, approval of personnel report. This calls for a motion. F1.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none.
Mr. Diffley, before you go on, I'd like to introduce someone who was just approved. I'd like to introduce, if you'd please stand, this is Mr. Stephen Deephouse. He is our new principal of Murrieta Valley High School. Do you have a prepared speech? Why don't you, something? Okay, yes. Why don't you take just a minute to share that? Oh, yeah, come on up.
Not to exceed 1 hour.
Okay, you got it. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, esteemed colleagues and members of the Murrieta community, I'm deeply honored and immensely grateful to accept the position of principal at Murrieta Valley High School. This school has long been a beacon of academic excellence, holistic development, and community spirit. It's been a privilege to be part of the Murrieta Valley community for the past 11 years, and I look forward to continuing and now leading a school that has such a profound impact on the lives of its students and the broader community. As I step into this role, I'm committed to continuing the legacy of excellence that Murrieta Valley High School is known for. Our International Baccalaureate program is a testament to our commitment to rigorous academic standards and global education, with our IB students consistently performing well above global averages. We're preparing them not only to college, but for a world that they can make meaningful contributions. This past year, we had the most full IB diploma graduates in our school's history, a testament to our dedicated staff and our IB coordinator. Our advanced placement courses further exemplified our dedication to academic rigor, with a high percentage of students scoring 3 or higher on AP exams, earning college credit while still in high school. This past April and May, across 17 days, our staff administered over 1,700 IB and AP exams, and we look forward to receiving our data from IB and College Board to share our success with these exams. We value our continued partnership with the Mount San Jacinto Community College Annex Program, which is an innovative online learning space that supports students with additional opportunities to access college-level coursework and earn college credit for MV students. This past year, our students represented 395 seats in the annex, which equaled 1,185 college credits. Our commitment to the arts is equally strong, with our visual and performing arts programs receiving numerous accolades at the regional and state levels, from our award-winning drama productions to our exceptional music and art programs. We're nurturing creativity and expression in our students, providing them with platforms to showcase their talents and build their confidence. Last Saturday, I attended the 2024 Lucy Arnez Awards in Palm Springs, where our drama students performed and were nominated for Outstanding Choreography and Outstanding Ensemble for the spring performance of Guys and Dolls. This is just one example of the outstanding contributions of our students and staff. Athletics at Murrieta Valley High School are a cornerstone of our community spirit. Our sports teams consistently perform at high levels, with many of our athletes going on to compete at the collegiate and professional levels. This past year alone, we won 9 league titles. But more than the accolades, our athletic programs teach teamwork, perseverance, and leadership, qualities that are essential for success in any field. In addition to our strong academic and extracurricular programs, we're deeply committed to equity and inclusion. Our AVID, Advanced via Individual Determination program of over 200 students, is designed to close the achievement gap by preparing all students for college readiness and success. It has a proven track record for helping students, particularly those from underrepresented groups, achieve their academic goals. Furthermore, our support of the English language learners, a growing demographic in our school, ensures that every student, regardless of language background, receives the resources and support they need to succeed. Murrieta Valley High School's designation as a unified champion school highlights our dedication to creating an inclusive environment where all students, including those with disabilities, can participate in activities and feel valued. This recognition underscores our commitment to fostering a culture of respect, empathy, and mutual support. Our career technical education pathways are another shining example of our commitment to providing comprehensive, future-focused education. We offer 8 CTE pathways at Murrieta Valley High School, and these pathways equip our students with the skills and experiences they need to succeed in the workforce and pursue their career ambitions. This past year, we had 119 students finish a 3-course sequence in one of our CTE pathways. Just today, we learned that 2 of our programs, fire science and law enforcement, were selected by the California Department of Education out of 8 selected programs in California to fund and support our application for the National Industry Certified Program of Excellence, which is a top recognition in law and public safety education. We will continue to examine workforce data to ensure we offer pathways for high-demand, high-wage jobs, and that our programs reflect the needs of our community. Our MVHS JROTC program continues to grow and support our community. This past year, they contributed to 28 public events, including Murrieta Rotary Club, Temecula VFW, American Legion, Marine Corps League, Memorial Day celebration, 9/11's Remembrance Ceremony, Murrieta Veterans Day Parade, Raider competitions, and multiple elementary and district events. I'm looking forward to this year where we develop a drone program, which will be able to attract the next generation of leaders to this quality program. Our students are at the heart of everything we do. They inspire us with their energy, creativity, and potential. As a school site leadership team, we're dedicated to providing them with the resources, opportunities, and support they need to pursue their passions and excel both inside and outside the classroom. Whether in academics, arts, athletics, or any endeavor, I want each student to feel empowered to explore their interests and achieve their goals. Thank you to the Board of Education for entrusting me with this significant responsibility. Thank you to the teachers, staff, parents, and students for your warm welcome and your commitment to excellence. Together, we'll continue to make Murrieta Valley High School a place where every student can thrive and succeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Deephouse, welcome to the new position, new office, I guess, too, right? Hearing the pride and the honor in your voice, I'm getting a little emotional here, makes my heart sing and tells me how much you've already given to MV and how much you're going to continue to give to MV. I think we have such a bright future ahead with you at the helm. I feel compelled to, because Mr. Tukwa is lurking in the background, tell you you've got some big shoes to fill, but you are the one to fill those shoes. Absolutely. And I've heard that throughout the community these past several weeks since it was announced. People are very, very happy and very excited to see what you're going to bring. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments from the
I agree with everything Linda said. I'm very happy to see that you are taking over
this position. And yeah, welcome and thanks for taking the job.
Mr. Deep House, you know that I represent your school, and I am, lots of people are proud and honored to have you serve our community, and we're excited to have you on board. There's a lot of teachers gave a lot of positive feedback about you being selected, and I can tell you personally that I'm really happy to see you in that spot as well. So good luck to you.
I'd like to say that my daughter, years and years ago, well, 2002, I think it was, graduated with honors from your high school and has often, every few times that I see her, referred somehow to the quality education she got from the teachers that were there. And that only happens generally when you have a leader who inspires those people to do their very best. So you have a legacy to look forward to, and I think you're going to do a great job. Welcome. Thank you. Any other comments? This calls for a motion.
Oh, we just need to vote, I think, right?
We need to vote. Okay.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to F2, approval of the 24-25 certificated and classified staffing plans. This calls for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments?
Yes, I'm always interested in this, seeing what positions are coming and which positions are going and partial positions and that kind of thing. And I did want to point out how happy I was to see that although we, was it 4 or 5 PE positions that were eliminated but then moved into VAPA positions, and that those are being filled. Very happy to see that. Thank you so much.
Any other comments? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. F3, assignment of high school teacher to teach in a departmentalized classroom pursuant to Education Code 44263 for the 2024-25 school year. This calls for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments? Could, Dr. Anders, would you describe for some of the people who perhaps are here and don't know what this means, teaching in a departmentalized classroom?
So usually it means that there's something about their credential which calls something very specific about their credential, or we have to do an adjustment. Mr. Rideout, would you like to add a little comment to that? This is his area of expertise.
Yeah, so in essence, there's several ways to be credentialed or to be allowed to teach a specific subject. And this is just one of those ways, but we have to actually have a board authorized and have a board approved. So that's why we have to bring it forward to the board.
It's great to know. Thank you. Do we have a motion?
Yes.
We did it, didn't
Okay.
we? Okay.
Okay, any other comments? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. F4, approval to replace IBI program supervisor job description with behavioral support supervisor job description. This calls for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Please.
Dr. Andrews, I was curious about, we're always changing names and titles, and could you specify the need for this change?
I had staff who worked at more closely, so they've been more familiar with it. Rich, if you want to add the comment. But typically what happens is as programs develop and change, needs change, and the job duties change. And so it was appropriate to make some adjustments to the job description. Rich, you want to add some detail, please?
Yeah, this position specifically in the job description was originally written with supporting behavioral disorders, things like autism. And the unique thing about this position is it also supports students prior to being labeled with those same behavioral disorders. So as such, we may need to make adjustments to the actual job description for what the people are currently doing and just bring it up to what they're currently doing in their job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Julie, did you have it?
That was pretty much my question. So.
Great, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. F5, discussion of potential resolution ordering a general obligation bond election on November 5th, 2024. Mr. Daniel, would you address this, please?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Diffley, district trustees. As you're aware, for the past year, the district has been in the process of a general obligation bond feasibility study. The board took action in 2023 to onboard a bond consultant to guide us through the feasibility study. Since that time, we've engaged our community, conducted formal and informal voter surveys. We've engaged with our city, studied our student enrollment demographics for what's expected for the next decade. Tonight, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Scott Ferguson from Jones Hall. Mr. Ferguson serves as our bond counsel who oversees the procedural bond processes as the district considers a general obligation bond for November 2024 election. As an informational item tonight, Mr. Ferguson will walk you through the draft bond package, which includes the draft resolution, the ballot question, the bond approved project list, the tax rate statement, and the accountability requirements. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome back Mr. Scott Ferguson to the Murrieta Valley Unified School District to present the draft bond documents and field questions that you may have. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. It's good to be back. It's been many years. As Mr. Daniels said, our firm serves as bond counsel to the district, and in that role, we're advising the district on the legality of placing this bond measure before the voters. I will walk us through the resolution, describe the various components, including the 3 attachments, which are the forms the basis for the ballot pamphlet that will go before the voters when they're deciding whether or not to vote on, or how to vote, I should say, on this measure. Unlike a courtroom lawyer, our firm's role is to be an advisor, not to advocate for or against any position, including this bond measure. What we're here for is to make sure that it's all done in accordance with law, namely the California Education Code, Government Code, and the California Constitution. A little bit about just the basic background for calling a general obligation bond measure. The process, as I said, is governed by state law and the California Constitution, namely Prop 39, and which the main requirement of Prop 39 is that taxes cannot be raised to pay bond debt service without a vote of the electorate, 55% vote. And this resolution is designed to follow all the requirements of Prop 39. Also under Prop 39, bond proceeds can only be used for the construction, reconstruction, rehabilitation, or replacement of school facilities, including furnishing and equipping of school facilities. So operating costs such as teacher, administrator salaries cannot be paid with bond proceeds. So let's walk through just the resolution. I thought I would just summarize the recitals in each of the sections. The first 4 recitals really talk about, they lay the groundwork. Why are we here? And it describes, in general terms, the facilities needs that the district is looking at as a background and as the reason why the board's considering this resolution tonight. And then the next, starting with the board is authorized upon a 2/3 vote of the board to pursue the authorization issuance of bonds by 55% vote. This starts in describing the legal authority. As I said, it's Proposition 39. The 2/3 vote of the board requirement means 4/5, 4 out of 5 board members need to vote yes for this resolution to pass. And if it does pass, when the bond measure gets on the November 2024 ballot, it requires a 55% vote of the electorate to pass. So this resolution does not authorize bonds. All it does is authorize the proposition to go on the ballot in November, asking the voters to approve the bonds. And I'll talk more about the actual bond issuance in a little bit. Further through There's a recital here that the board may request consolidation of the election to the county registrar. That tees up the concept that the board's not conducting this election. The district is asking the county registrar to consolidate, put it on the ballot, and then to incorporate the ballot language and other materials on that combined ballot that everybody's going to see. The second to last on this first page, the whereas clause that talks about reasonable informed projections. This goes to the tax rate statement, which is part of the package that goes before voters, which has to do with the best estimates as to the tax rate and duration of the taxes that would support this bond if approved. The last one on this page, so the bonds, our whole intent and an important role that my firm plays is to advise a district for any issuance of bonds, including CFD bonds, about the rules about tax exemption. And this is important because the district's governmental agency and is able to issue tax exempt bonds, which bear a much lower interest rate than taxable corporate bonds. And so this last recital here will allow the district, if there are any capital costs that are paid out of reserves before the first series of bonds is issued, this would allow those proceeds to be reimbursed to the district. It's an expression of intent that the IRS requires, and we like to put it in. We like to put it in a resolution just as soon as possible, so that there's no question about the clock ticking. So Section 1, recitals. Sections 2 and 3, this is calling the election on the question of issuing $198 million worth of bonds for the purposes described in Exhibit A and B, which I'll describe, and then naming the election date, November 5 of this year. Section 4, this describes further these exhibits to the resolution, which will be the ballot. There's the full text of the measure, and we'll go through all these as we walk through the exhibits. The full text of the measure, and then the abbreviated form, that's a 75-word ballot label that sits on the top of everyone's ballot. And this Section 4 also recites the legal authority for these pieces and why they're required. Again, Section 5 recites the legal authority for the election, both state law and the California Constitution. Section 6, again, certifies that the bonds will only be used for the purposes specified in Section 1B3 of Article 13A. That's Prop 39. That's the renovation, rehabilitation, acquisition of school facilities that I read earlier. And then it recites the requirement that the bond proceeds can't be used for any other purpose, such as teacher and administrative salaries or other school operating expenses. And then it also has another recital that the board and the district has evaluated safety class size and other needs in developing the school facilities list. Section 7, both Prop 39 and other state law require a whole host of accountability measures for any bond issuance regarding how those bond proceeds are spent. An annual independent performance audit needs to be conducted. An annual financial audit done by a CPA also needs to be prepared. And again, this is all looking at how the bond proceeds were spent during that year on school facilities. An independent citizens oversight committee will be established, again, as required by law. This was already done, done for the district's prior general obligation bond issues. So it's kind of a known quantity. It's a known entity, but we'll establish a new one should this bond issue be approved by the voters. That the district will apply the proceeds only to the specific purposes stated in the ballot measure, kind of goes without saying. There will be separate accounts into which the bond proceeds will be deposited. That's kind of handled when we go to issue, when we draft the documents related to each issuance of the bonds. Those documents specify the accounts, and there's, you know, serious tracking, and both for these purposes and because the tax code requires a detailed record of how you spend your bond proceeds and what earnings you earn on those bond proceeds. Because in the unlikely event that any bond issuer ever audited, that's the record that we would show to the auditor and say, look, this is everything they spent the funds on. They were all capital costs, et cetera. And then the last one is another annual report. This one is required by a separate section of the government code, and that gets filed annually with this board. So the Section 8 is a statement regarding state matching funds. This is a statement that's required to be here under the statute, and it's basically saying that we can assume, well, it addresses the uncertainty that the state matching funds will be available, right? So, in a situation, in a circumstance like we're seeing today, there are questions about the state facilities program. So that's a statement required by the statute. Again, Section 9 says at another time, no teacher or administrative salaries can be paid with the bond proceeds. Section 10 and 11 and 12, for that matter, are kind of mechanics and housekeeping. This resolution gets delivered to the county registrar of voters, and these sections basically flesh out the request to the county registrar. Please, you know, handle this election for us, and this constitutes the district's official request under these various code sections to do that. So this checks more boxes on the statutory requirements. Now, 13 is that tax rate statement I mentioned earlier. This is attached as Exhibit C, again, also required by the Elections Code. Section 14 just recites the maturity limit is a legal limit for each series. I believe the presumption will be that each series will have a 30-year maturity. That's kind of market standard. And I'll mention this later, but one thing that this highlights is that should the bond measure be approved, the district wouldn't issue $198 million worth of bonds all in one go. Both federal tax laws require that each issuance can only be in an amount that the district reasonably expects they can spend in 3 years. So by that definition, a bond authorization of this size would be broken up into separate series issued over time. And frankly, I've always heard too that just getting facilities, getting the work ready, it's you know, it will be what can we spend within 3 years. So that there'll be multiple series of these bonds. Section 15 is just cautionary language about estimates included in the ballot materials as to the tax rates. There's more language in the full text of the ballot measure, and that is aimed at the voters. This further on in this section about the estimates of tax rates, we have a statement that the current expectation is that there will be no increase in tax rates, at least from the current year to the next, and this is all because the district has outstanding bonds. Those bonds are maturing, and those principal amounts are shrinking. And the projection, the estimate today is that as we issue new bonds, they would fill in and take the place of the debt service that the district's paying on the old bonds. So it's an estimate. It's not ironclad, but that's the expectation based on the current estimates today. Section 16, this is that official intent. This is written for the IRS that we could, if the district comes out of pocket to spend money on school projects before the first issuance, which can happen, this allows us to reimburse those costs. And then the last couple things are housekeeping. Official actions allows these various school officials to take any other actions. The county registrar needs a letter certifying something. This allows us to do that. Section 18 engages my firm and the municipal advisor to the district, and that's the resolution. The resolution is, it's meant to, it's a public document, it's in the record, but it's not meant to, it's really intended to create a record that we've followed the law, done everything in accordance with the Constitution, and it's for the district primarily. Now the exhibits, on the other hand, as I mentioned, this is the text that will appear in the ballot pamphlet that the voters will have before them, should this appear on the ballot in November. So Exhibit A, this is, as I mentioned, the full text of the ballot measure, and I'll just walk through the sections. First one recites what we're doing, the bond authorization, how much, what the threshold, 55% is. Accountability requirements. This goes into more detail about those accountability requirements that we talked about earlier. District has evaluated needs, the appointment of the Independent Citizens Oversight Committee, performance audits, financial audits, and then the additional accountability requirements that the government code imposes. Next section, again, we say it a lot, no teacher or administrator salaries can be paid with the proceeds of these bonds. The state matching fund statement, there's no guarantee that they will come in. And then the next section is, again, more kind of cautionary language that the estimates contained in this ballot language are just estimates, and they're subject to change, right? No one has a crystal ball and can predict with certainty what the finances are going to look like. And then the next one is the bond project list. This is a general list, again, by design. There are, the idea being that the districts, as the bonds are issued in series over, could be, a 6, 8, 10-year period, we don't know today what the priorities are that the district has, which schools, which areas of the district are going to have the greatest needs. And so this list is designed to allow staff and your board to make those decisions as the bond program rolls along and as each series of bonds comes before you for approval. And then below the bulleted list, there's just language just making clear that incidental expenses associated with the projects are included in what could be financed. Furnishing and equipping, this goes into more detail about what that means. Alterations to scope, this allows for, again, flexibility as projects are proposed, refined, and then there's a determination to fund them. Interim financing and joint use projects, in case that ever comes up, this describes and allows for that. The project list, not an order of priority. The board determines prioritization. I talked about that a little bit. This just says it in more words. And then the last two are kind of boilerplate, interpretation and severability. Just more detail about how the project list will be interpreted. So Exhibit B, this is that 75-word ballot language. This has been developed with input from me and also from the district's consultants and advisors, including results of the polling Mr. Daniel mentioned, and otherwise. I looked at it to make sure it's 75 words and checks all the boxes of what needs to appear here. The pollsters looked at it to make sure that it was addressing the needs that they found that the community thought was important. And then last, the tax rate statement. This will also appear in the ballot pamphlet that the voters will see. And it contains best estimates based on today's circumstances of the average annual tax rate, the highest tax rate, and the total debt service if all of the bonds are issued. So that goes through the resolution. I think just a couple of closing things. A reminder for those of you who have been through this process before, board members can't advocate for or against a bond measure. Any public communications by the district can only provide objective information about the bond measure and the district's facility needs. That's an important thing to bear in mind.
Would you repeat that one more time? What board members are allowed to do?
Just disseminate objective information about the bonds or the project needs of the district. It's advocacy, and I have written guidelines. I believe it's CSAC has come out with written guidelines that goes into much more detail on that. And as I said before, the entire $198 million bond authorization can't be issued at the same time. It'll be broken up into smaller series issued over multiple years. And each time it's proposed to issue a series of bonds, we'll come back to the board with a bond resolution and specific projects that bond will finance. So the board will need to take action at a public meeting like this one to consider it. And the timing will depend on facilities needs, which projects are the most in need, and also market conditions. There are circumstances in 2008, 2009 is the one that hurts the most, where nobody issued bonds because the market was so upside down. So it's not just a matter of, there's nothing automatic about this. We'll be coming back to the board, and the board will be getting advice from our firm, from its financial advisor, which is a fiduciary. It's a fiduciary relationship. They have an obligation to advise what's best for the district, and so that there are a lot of safety rails. I guess I should say, but that surround each individual issuance of bonds. Last, just another reminder, it's a 4 out of 5 requirement to approve this resolution, and this doesn't approve the bonds, just approves the ballot measure. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
So to be very, very, very clear, us voting on this resolution is not us voting to implement or issue this bond or put this burden on the community. Us voting on this resolution is to simply put it onto the ballot so that the community may vote.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, because there seems to be some confusion about that with people asking us, please don't do this bond, please don't. As a MVUSD resident, I'll get one vote on it, just like everyone else in this room. Well, not everybody, because I know not everybody is actually an MVUSD resident here in the room, but all residents in MVUSD will be allowed to vote on this.
Yes, all registered voters within the boundaries.
Okay, right. Thank you for being clear about that.
A quick question. It says $26 per $100,000 assessed value. And is that per year, per month?
Per year.
That's per year.
So if I have a $500,000 house, right, I'm looking at $30 a year?
But it depends on, it's not the market value, it's the assessed value. So it really depends on how long anybody has owned their house, because the assessed value resets whenever property changes hands, and then it goes up by 2% a year. So this is why we have neighbors. If you've been in your house for 30 years, your property tax bill could be a tenth of your neighbor who bought their house last year. So it all keys off of the value that the county is assessing you on.
And is this just residential properties?
No, it's all property within the boundaries of the district.
Oh.
Business and corporate?
Yes.
Oh,
And then you said assessed value based on, so for example, I'm very old, I've been here for a little while. So my value is based on what I paid back in 2008. People who just bought, it's going to be significantly higher.
That's right.
Yeah.
You'll see the term, maybe not in this document, but you'll see the term ad valorem tax, and that means based on assessed value.
So younger people trying to buy, like the young woman who is up here, they're going to bear a greater burden of tax on this particular issue, in addition to the corporations.
Yeah, and anyone having a higher assessed value, right, will have a higher tax bill based on this.
Any other questions?
I have a question. So Exhibit B, the ballot measure abbreviated form, and it states in there, the measure be adopted authorizing $198 million in bonds at legal rates, and then in parentheses, without increasing current tax rates. So doesn't isn't there, I can't remember which page it was, but that's not a guarantee, right? I mean, wasn't there something in?
It's in the 75 words, and I think I might have misspoken a little bit there, actually, because that is a commitment in the ballot language, and also the expectation based on projections.
So, so what was I looking at that says it was not a guarantee? I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the page here. Oh, let's see. It's about the tax rate. Voters are informed that any estimates or projections in the bond measure or ballot materials, including relating to estimated tax rates, the duration of issued bonds, and related tax levies, are provided as informational only. Such amounts are estimates and are not maximum amounts or limitations on the terms of the bonds.
And that goes to the $26. The promise in the 75 words is without increasing current tax rates. So
how do those two, I guess I just don't understand how those two go together.
Well, so the way it will work is at the time when each series of bonds is issued, the financial advisor will look at the $26 per 100,000 as that's our limit in terms of how much in bonds we can issue.
So should the wording state something like, to be limited to $26 per 100,000?
We can look at that. Yeah.
And there was another place too, which I'm not seeing it right off the top. I mean, it was about the tax rate.
I would just say the one thing, looking at it is a little misleading, because in one sense, you would have a tax cut. Without the bond, there'd be a tax cut.
Because the older bonds are rolling off. Right.
Right, and I mean, that's what you had said.
But, I mean, I guess what we're asking voters to vote on is
I understand.
the
My
$26 per.
right. The constituents, I'm just saying, may not be picking up on that, but I understand what you're saying. You know, it does say there's no increase without increasing current tax rates, but in reality, they would have a tax cut.
It's a right. It's a flip side of the same, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead.
okay, I actually have 2 points I'd like to make. Correct me if I'm wrong, but because it's a special meeting and public commenters commented on an agenda item, we can answer questions, correct?
It's true.
True. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm doing that right. One of the questions was more open discussions over time. Well, part of the process, if we as a board vote to put this onto the election ballot, then the district steps out and a volunteer organization steps in to begin doing all of those discussions and educating of the public. And it's a very intense campaign. I would like very much to have those guidelines about where board members can and can't do. That would be really helpful for me, I think, for all of us.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Clarity.
And what are
on
the
that,
penalties?
when Measure BB went through back in, was it 2013, 2014? I can remember that this group went to PTAs, they went to site councils, they went to Rotary clubs, they went everywhere educating people on this, but that was not a district organization, it was a volunteer organization. So those questions and those open discussions and those town hall opportunities do happen. The other thing, and Dr. Anderson, I was wondering if you could address this. Mr. Rogario, I think you asked about transfer students and how do we get reimbursed for them, or, you know, do they just come in and use up our resources? Could we talk about ADA and that kind of thing?
So all students, regardless of where they live, if they're enrolled in our district, we are funded for them based on their, just because they are enrolled in the district. So it's an ADA compliance. There are some students who come to us, James will have to give me some more information on that, who we do collect certain fees from them. I think if they're out of the country, things like that. Then there's other people, those organizations pay us fees for those students.
But normally we wouldn't be able to answer public comment questions for a regular board meeting if they weren't on agendized items, just for clarity. Sometimes public comment is it's kind of a love-hate relationship because it's so important to have public comment. But during regular board meetings, when people comment on things that are not on the agenda, we cannot answer them. We try to get a staff member to grab you on the way out to help answer your questions as much as possible. And of course, you can always contact the district with those questions and get those questions answered. But in a board meeting, we just can't answer them.
I would just want to add, I mean, the one thing that's really important is language in a lot of these is obviously pro. The language in this is, hey, we would like you to, because if it said tax cut, like I had said earlier, you'd be implying like, oh, I don't know if this is a great idea. That would be a little bit more negative on the flip side of the same coin, as you had just pointed out. What I'm saying is it would discourage some from voting for the bond. And so as we then go to inform the public, so one of the issues that I think I have is constituents, I've seen this a lot, they don't show up regularly. I see the same faces, the same names come up almost all the time, right? The constituents who are like, yay, Mr. Pardue, I'm so glad you're in that spot. You're doing a great job representing us. They don't take the time to pay attention. And then the only thing they have is that, and then our cheerleading after we've already voted. And so then they're open to a lot of persuasion that says, vote this way. So there still is, and I'm just making this comment to Linda's point, we still have to be responsible to our constituents who are not necessarily following what's going on. And that's why I'm making the comments that I make, and also why I think it's important for all of us here as board members to understand we do represent constituents who might not be following this very closely. And I think that's a really important point that I just wanted to make. So I wanted to be clear on what the tax was and by how much, and also the idea that there was the potential that it could be a tax cut as well.
Yeah, I think that this abbreviated form I think that's misleading. I don't like that language, because people are paying more taxes, will be paying more taxes than they would be if this bond wasn't added onto the schedule.
Could I ask one more question on this issue? One of our, I think it was Jack was mentioning, public forums. I wrote it down. Town hall meeting style things, which I think is what we're talking about. Once we pass, we would be open to sharing with the public a lot about what this bond is about and why we want them there. And I know I've attended some of your events, or at least one event.
You were invited to all of them.
I know you invited me. I was only able to make,
You were
I
busy.
think, one or something.
No worries, no
But I
worries.
do remember being there and kind of aware. There wasn't a ton of participation at the time. Like, again, this is a large community. There's a lot of people. And informing the public at a school theater and really letting parents know, hey, this bond issue is a thing. And that, granted, we might have had no one show up for that too. And so what I'm getting at is kind of why didn't we, or could we, or is that just we haven't had success in the past? Do we not usually get that much feedback from?
So there was, as you know, there was a series of data gathering in a variety of ways. We didn't necessarily advertise town hall meetings. We had advisory group meetings that were happening, but also the same questions. Our principals went to all of their school site advisory committees as well and asked the same questions, like, what do you think we need in these schools? And we actually got a lot of feedback around shade structures and portable replacement, things like that. And so, no, we didn't do that broad, like a series of big town hall meetings, because we were using the resources that we had that we know to be pretty effective for people to come to. But we also did the mailers with asking for survey responses. And then, of course, the professional poll, which asked the voters specifically about this question. And they, as we saw the data back in February, they asked it, 3 different ways and times. And so all of those were data gathering pieces to get outreach from the community for that.
The email piece that got so many parents to show up in this room not too long ago about the parent notification issue, we got a great response. And I'm just kind of curious. I'm just wondering if everyone is really aware of what's going on. That's my concern. And so I'm not sure how effective we've been at reaching the community. And of course, the other thing is the interest rate issues and the timing in terms of just the economics of what's going on. It seems like a precarious time.
As was described, we don't just because the bond, but again, the first question, as Linda stated, is like, are we going to get on the ballot? If the voters approve it, it doesn't mean that we issue all this right up front. It's only like about how much project worth, as you described, in about 3 years' time. So we actually refer to these as a bond program. So like Measure BB is a program, a series of issuances at different times. So I would anticipate we wouldn't be actually going out to issue a bond until sometime probably sometime in 2025, because we don't have again, we go back to the work about, okay, off that project list, where's the priority? And what are the priority pieces we want to get done? We develop the construction project, get the estimates, so we have an idea about how much should we go issue for the first bond. So it's not immediate, and so we do time that to get the best possible rate, and at the same time, we're balancing that with cost of construction. So as costs go up, we also want to take advantage of maybe some lower costs or lower pricing. We actually did that this year. We went out to bid on a project, and these bids were very expensive. We waited until that bid process was over. Some contractors were hungry. We got a better price. And so we go through that process to save and be as responsible as we possibly can.
Also with the timing and the 50% matching potential, so we could potentially get almost another 100 million matched with this. Everybody knows about this. It's big, all public school districts are doing this. And in 2026, that money won't be there. So there is a little bit of a timing issue on that it would be a savvy move.
And there's another aspect of that. Just for clarification, you're only allowed to put bond measures on the ballot in even years. So we'd have to do it in 24, or we would not be able to do it again until 26. And that, in addition to the potential matching funds. I read an article about that in today's paper, that the state is planning on putting a bond measure on the ballot, which would give us the matching funds.
I have a question. You referred to that there's questions about the state facilities program, and I think that was related to a possible matching funds. What were you referring to with that?
It's language that's required by the statute, that we anticipate that there could be state matching funds, but as required by this section of the Ed Code, approval of this measure doesn't guarantee that we'll get the state matching funds. This is the language that's required.
Yeah, so what were you saying about the state facilities program? I think you mentioned that there's some problems with or questions about it.
Only the vague things that I'm hearing from my partners. I don't know. That's not my area, so unfortunately, so I don't know the specifics.
Yeah.
An example might be is that the state has a series of statewide facility bonds, and as those are used up, they might have expended all those dollars, which is one of the reasons why there's discussion about having another statewide bond to again match and provide matching funds. They process those kind of in the order they come in and priority, and they have it's a little bit of a we get in line to be reimbursed, and we're never quite sure exactly when those reimbursement dollars come. So though we appreciate them, you cannot count on them. You don't know when they're going to come and exactly the dollar amount that you're going to get back. And so we submit all the documentation that we can based on former projects, like for example, the completion of Murrieta Mesa. And they said, okay, we're going to match this, and so you're in line. And when that comes, it's kind of a question of when it's going to actually happen. And then when it comes, so you can't necessarily like, oh, we're going to get X number of dollars from them. We should be getting approximately this much money from the state at some point in time in the future. So in the meantime, you're still working with your bond dollars. And then when that money shows up, you roll it into that facilities fund again for those future ones. But you just don't count on it. What's the phrase? Until like the eggs that hatch or whatever that phrase goes.
Don't count your
There you go. Thank you.
chickens before they're hatched.
Yes, you know they're coming, but you just don't know exactly when. So that's one of the challenges with the state bond facilities or state facility bonds as they come up to play. So in that regard, that's why that statement's in there. We as an organization cannot count on with 100% certainty that money's going to show.
Well, especially since there might be a bond put for school facilities on the ballot. It may pass. If it does pass, then that'll be an additional tax that we're all paying. So.
Well, yeah, different. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Different context. Yeah. But yes.
Okay. The last statement I really have, and my biggest concern is the citizens of Murrieta are going to have a perpetual tax put on them for their schools, while the state of California, who is recklessly, irresponsibly, fiscally putting us in a terrible situation. No one's really has the appetite to continue to pay these outrageous taxes in the state of California. And then locally, we're like, oh, we're just going to fit the bill when other districts are getting huge doses of money. And I think you've spoken to this before. We've had conversations on the side. There's districts making a ton of money. They can't even spend all their money. Meanwhile, we're taxing our citizens more. Our teachers are getting paid less. All of our buildings are deteriorating and not being fixed because the state has created a formula that just doesn't really fit. So it becomes really difficult for me to sit up here and say, oh, I got an idea. Let's keep paying a perpetual tax on the citizens of Murrieta because our state can't be responsible enough to take care of the kids in our community. And then additionally, be as disrespectful as they are to the parents that come out here voicing their concerns about their cultural values, how they'd like to see their kids raised. And I've said this before, the political activism that we see over and again that comes from, unfortunately some of our employees too, is hurting the cause. It hurts the cause. No one wants to put money towards schools that look like indoctrination centers that are becoming state-run schools. And so we have to change that narrative. And unfortunately, that narrative continues, and it makes it very, very difficult to sell this particular bond. I'm just going to say that out loud as we ponder this over the next week. So that's my last statement on it.
I'd like to just share some anecdotal information because I have been frustrated too with the LCFF, the local control funding formula, because there are districts, just up the road, they get $40 million more than we do. And I've heard their CBO say, gosh, we just can't spend it. And here in Murrieta, we see a dime on the ground, we pick it up. Several years ago, when I was working at the county level PTA, my job was to go out and charter new PTAs at schools. So principals would call me and say, hey, can you help us get a PTA going? Sure. So I got a call from a principal out at a school out in the Salton Sea area. And they said, well, can you come out Tuesday morning at 7:30? And I said, well, I'm in Murrieta. I'm going to have to get up, and that's a 2.5, 3 hour drive. What? 7:30? Is there anything else? And the principal said to me, these parents are desperate to be involved in their students' lives, and they see a parent-teacher organization as a vehicle to do that. They work 2 and 3 jobs to keep a roof over their head and to keep food on the table. And this is when they can meet, because I can open the cafeteria as the president or the principal, and the kids can eat, and we can have this meeting, and we can get this parent engagement organization going. And when I went out there and saw the homes and saw the properties, I was humbled to live here in Murrieta. That doesn't make me like the LCFF funding formula anymore, but it reminds me of where I live and the blessings that I'm so grateful for here.
Any more comments?
If everyone's done with questions, I did have some comments that I prepared that I would like to read if everyone's finished asking questions. I mean, this is a discussion, and I had prepared comments for our discussion.
For this particular topic?
Yes, the bond.
I'd like to limit it because we had a lot of discussion and everybody's weary.
Well, so we haven't had any town halls for the people, and then I just have a short, a page and a half, which I can read quickly, and this is the meeting to do it. Or you can gavel me if you want, but we're discussing and I have comments.
People in here are practically ready to fall down. Some of them are asleep, and so I'm not speaking to.
I don't think it's appropriate to limit the comments of the board members.
Say again, I'm sorry.
I don't think it's appropriate to limit the comments. We don't limit the public comments. We shouldn't limit an elected official's comments.
All right, let's go. Let's hear what wonderful things you have to say.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Curtis.
Yeah, go ahead and sit
Oh,
down.
I'm sorry. Thank you for coming.
This could be 20 minutes.
Thank you.
All right. So we are scheduled to vote in 1 week on a Murrieta School District resolution ordering an election to authorize the issuance of general obligation bonds in the amount of $198 million. In February of this year, the district held a workshop to report the conclusions of various consultants regarding the need for and the likelihood of passing a nearly $200 million bond in Murrieta. This workshop was attended by board members, district administration, and about 10 residents. The district has mailed out 2 mailers and conducted 1 telephone poll to gauge the support of Murrietans. Last month, we were given a project list to approve. Additionally, we have had presentations at several board meetings. Despite this outreach, I've personally not met one previously uninvolved person who knew that a general obligation bond for the Murrieta School District is under consideration. While this bond proposal is being touted as not a tax increase, just a tax extension, and is a possibility for attracting some matching state funds if a proposed state school facilities bond passes, I think rushing this to the ballot does a disservice to our community. I would like to suggest that we show respect to our community and take the time to have a deliberative discussion about what our facilities priorities should be, as well as take further time to study enrollment projections. While data shows student migration away from expensive coastal areas to less expensive inland school districts like ours, there are unexplained enrollment losses that should be clarified before proceeding. Currently, 1 in 9 public school students are enrolled in charter schools, and increasing numbers are leaving public schools for homeschooling. Additionally, the state of California tops U-Haul's list as the state with the largest net loss of one-way movers for the 4th year in a row. What will happen to enrollment in California public schools if Sacramento passes AB 1955 this session, which would prevent school boards from adopting policies to keep parents informed about their own child's critical struggles that come to light while at school? This Murrieta school bond proposal, if placed on the November 2024 ballot by the board and subsequently adopted by 55% of Murrieta voters, will impact our residents to highly varied degrees. As the tax will be levied on assessed value, residents who bought their homes decades ago will pay significantly less than residents who bought their homes recently. Property taxes impact the rents residents pay, which are already crippling for many people living in our valley. People who are on fixed incomes who may have anticipated relief at the expiration of the Measure D tax in fiscal year 2024-25 would not get that relief. California School Board Association magazine reports that students experiencing homelessness in California has increased 750% since 2018. Do we not have a duty to scrutinize our budgets and our spending priorities in solidarity with our community? Do we not have a duty to reach out to our community to ascertain their priorities and concerns? Yes, we do have site councils, parent groups, and student groups. On the other hand, the LCAP link on our district website has no survey for the general voting public to voice their concerns, even though the LCAP and the district budget are supposed to be the vehicles by which our district is accountable to the community. How would Murrieta voters know that a project list was going to be discussed last month and that we will be voting in 1 week to, quote, let the voters decide, unquote, whether to further tax themselves? Yes, I have been encouraged to vote to put the bond initiative on the ballot and let the voters decide. If the board votes to advance this $200 million initiative to the November ballot, I wonder how much of our operating budget will be dedicated to garnering voter support. What voter populations will be informed? Will our often touted equity principles ensure that our lower income residents, multifamily households, and our families experiencing homelessness will be duly notified of their opportunity to weigh in? How many will be honestly told that this new Murrieta tax may be lumped in with numerous other proposed new taxes that have been discussed recently in the news? A 1% sales tax increase in Riverside County, a 50-cent gas tax increase, a state mileage tax, the billions in bond dollars that California lawmakers are currently pushing to get on the November ballot. As is stated on the rationale for today's agenda item F5, the state does not provide regular funding to address such needs, so we have to find a local source. This is true. One reason, as reported this past Monday by the Press Enterprise, is that California public employees' salary and pension obligations are multiplying so rapidly that there simply is not money left for other budget priorities. This is why we see urgent pleas for taxes to repair potholes, bolster public safety, mitigate traffic congestion, and yes, build school facilities. I hope we can delay putting this bond initiative in front of voters to give us time to further assess likely enrollment and give Murrietans a chance to be informed, ask questions, and voice their priorities. This will give the district more time to present a concrete plan with accountability and even to solicit philanthropic contributions to address district facility needs. Let's exercise patience and deliberation and take the necessary time to have the hard conversations that help us coalesce as a community on our spending priorities. Thank you.
Very interesting. Thank you. Unfortunately, looking, and this is my opinion, driving down the different highways that we have in the city, enduring the traffic that is getting more dense, seems like by the day, looking at the huge complex of apartments that are going up, I can relate something from my experience, which I will do and do it very briefly. When I taught in Glendale for 34 years, when I first started, and at a single ethnic group. Okay, that's the way things were. After a period of time of about 10 years, another ethnic group from the Far East began to populate the city, which is not a problem. I mean, I'm not complaining about that. What I noticed was that when they came in, one person or one family would buy an apartment or rent an apartment, enough for one family.
but 2 to 3 other families would soon move in with them, which would triple the number of cars that were supposed to be there. So the streets became incredibly crowded and the schools became crowded. And it was something that people didn't expect. You say we can wait. Well, we can wait. But the longer we wait, the more we stay behind the curve because things are happening that are out of our control. Now we can assess those things, and perhaps we should do it soon if we haven't done it already. But if we're going to decide this, we have to decide it, I believe, rather quickly. You've got this situation building, and it's not going away. We've seen, at least the board of Education has seen maps of the entire city of Murrieta. Virtually every piece of dirt that could be considered building potential is either spoken for or up for sale. And believe me, they're selling and they're filling those up as we see. Same thing is happening in Temecula. We can only wait so long, we can only be patient so long before we begin to lose the edge that we have right now. You say, well, people are moving out of California. They're going to move away from the school district. Possibly that will mean that we won't have to provide housing. Well, it has not happened in our district, and our projections show that it will probably not happen at all. So we reach an interesting point here. We have some good arguments on both sides, but I think we need to come to a point soon with the board in the next few weeks of deciding what it is that is the most important. Absolutely must decide what's the most important. We need to sit down and talk about it as a board and then come to some sort of reasonable, logical agreement. Should be interesting. Anyway, thank you for your time. Let's move on to F6, which is public hearing regarding the proposed 2024-25 Local Control and Accountability Plan and the Local Control Funding Formula Budget Overview for Parents for the fiscal year 2024/25. I hereby open the public hearing at 7 p.m. Do we have any comments or questions on this issue?
That was done during public comment?
Yeah, it was
or
done during
we do
public
it
comment.
again?
Pardon me?
He said it was done during public comments.
Yeah, all right, good. I hereby close the public meeting at 7:01. F8, approval of the 24-25 application for funding consolidated application and reporting system. This calls for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? F9, public hearing regarding the proposed Murrieta Valley Unified School District budget for fiscal year 2024-25. This is a public hearing. I open the public hearing at 7:01 p.m. Do we have any comments or questions? Hearing none, I hereby close the public meeting at 7:01 and a half. Pretty interesting. p.m. Closed session, we've made a report out. Therefore, we go to adjournment. I call for a motion to adjourn the Board of Education meeting at 7:02 p.m.
So moved. I'll second it.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for coming. Thank you for enduring to the end.